This 911 Strong podcast is brought to you by our partners at the Police Credit Union of California.
As a financial institution founded by law enforcement for law enforcement and their families over 65 years ago, they have the experience and understanding to help you with all your financial needs,
including exclusive products designed specifically for law enforcement professionals. To become a member today, visit thepolicecu.org. That's the police, the letter C, and the letter U.org.
Or call 800-222-1391 and tell them you heard about them from the 911 Strong podcast.
Station to all units.
Prepare to copy.
You're listening to the 911 Strong podcast.
Don't act like I never told you.
With Aram and Kristen, bringing you stimulating discussion.
No, I like the sound of that.
An entertaining conversation.
And now, here's Kristen and Aram.
Hey friends, welcome back to the 911 Strong podcast. I am Aram Choe, and with me as always is America's favorite dispatcher, my friend dispatcher Kristen. What's up, Kristen?
Oh, hola, just waking up. How are you?
I know it is early today because we have a Disney date coming up.
We do.
After we record this episode, we're heading out to Disneyland because we need an adult day desperately. I mean,
yeah,
you were telling
we
me
haven't had one in a while.
I haven't, but you know, when we do get together, a lot of times it's with our families, which is good. And we need to do that. We need to include our families, but we do it a lot. So I think we can get away with having an adult day.
I think so.
And Lord knows after the morning you had this morning, you need it.
Yeah, I do. Away from kids.
Yes. Speaking of away from kids, you know where's a great place to go if you're in Southern California and you just need to get away and get your mind off of things?
You mean other than locking my bedroom door?
Yeah, away, like, you know, head to Orange County somewhere and visit guns and gear. You need to visit ProForce in Brea. ProForce Law Enforcement in Brea. Every time Liz and I go there, Liz says it's like when she goes into Hobby Lobby, you know, she's like,
there's a little bit of everything in every aisle.
Oh, there is. And it's not just, I mean, you're not going to find stuff like, I don't want to put down any brands, but I've been to some of these shops and they have like gear from stuff that real cops would never wear in patrol because they get laughed at. You want the stuff that they're really wearing out in deployment. And it's because the people that work there are veterans, they're cops, they're military, and they know what they're doing. And because they know what they're doing, they know what they want. And when they kid out, they want the good stuff. And that's why our friends at ProForce they're so legit. They're first responder only. So like you have to have an ID basically to go in. They won't let you in the door. It's kind of like being part of a secret club, except you're already a member if you have a first responder ID. That's EMT, firefighter, paramedic.
Right.
Your military ID, and they'll let you in. Anyways, visit our friends in ProForce Law Enforcement in Brea, look them up and tell them the 911 Strong podcast sent you. All right. Well, before we get to our Disney date, we're talking about how we need adult time to get away. And that's so important because besides being professional podcast hosts, Kristen and I have lives. We have our profession.
Shocker.
I know. But, you know, we get several messages a day. And the one I want to address today is the one specifically about you. I mean, they know we're busy. They know we have a profession. They know outside of work, we do things like you do your magazines and TV and podcasts, and you know, and we do this one together. And if anybody's followed us for any length of time, I'm sure you've gotten this message every once in a while yourself: is how do you squeeze it all in and still be a mom and a wife? And that's what we're going to talk about today, because it's all about balance. So today we're interviewing Kristen Jauregui, police wife.
Ooh.
Police daughter, police granddaughter,
and
police friend. I made that title up just about 5 minutes ago.
That's a good one.
But but you know, some of our listeners probably want to know how you balance it all. I mean, have you had a serious mental breakdown, or do you just figure out ways to cope with it all? And this last 12 months has been trying, especially in the position that you're in. Not only have you had to face it at work, and they tell you don't bring that stuff home, but in your case, it is your home.
Yeah.
How do you deal with all
that? It's a lot. So I guess in general, before last year, we'll say, I just maybe it's because that's how I was brought up, since my dad was in law enforcement too, and we always took vacations.
Mhm.
That was always something ingrained in me. So I always made time for that because we get burned out at work,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to go through that. And I don't live for work. I work to live. And that's just kind of like how I've always been set. And I know that that can be frowned upon, but at the end of the day, when you retire, you have your family to go home to. You don't have your work to go home to.
Right.
And so we value our family and our marriage, and that's what we set as our priority, and that comes above work. And as far as the kids go, I mean, it gets really hard in the beginning. Chaselyn was heavily into gymnastics.
Yeah.
She was on level 9 and going into elite. And so we were practicing in Costa Mesa, which for us is a good like hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours with traffic drive to and from. And her practice would be from 4 to 7.
All right.
So, which is a lot just for us being, parents of one kid. And then when we had Sadie and had to do that carpooling, it was a lot and it was taxing and stuff. So, but you just make it work. And other things, we talk about balance, and it's never going to be evenly balanced. Something's going to suffer. So like for us, I know that there's some like OCD moms who love their house clean, but for me, that wasn't a necessity. It's a want, but not a need, because my need was getting my kid to practice. So, we would just have day dates with the kids, and we ended up working out carpools with other moms, and you just have to find what works. I mean, it's taxing and exhausting. And then
It's
comes
not like you don't want those things like a clean house and all those things, but they're not high on your priority list, right? Your children.
Right. Like it's right. Like I'm not gonna, well, nowadays I'm not gonna have this like Instagram worthy home. Like it's sorry, my kids make a mess and I'll clean it up when I go to one tornado filled room, and then they'll trash another one. I mean, they're getting better now because they're older, but when they're little, like I just learned to just let it go, and I'll get to it when I get to it. Not everything needs to be perfect. So I kind of like let that go. Like it doesn't mean I'm failing as a mom because I have freaking laundry still on the couch, or, there's dirty dishes in the sink. Like it'll get done. It just doesn't need to all be done now.
I think most people relate to that though, right? I mean, we see our perfect lives on Instagram, but that's because that's what people put out, want you to see. But the people that get the most traction are right. Like think about some of the people that you follow. Mm-hmm. You're following the real people, right? Oh, she's not afraid to show her messy kitchen or her kids with their hair all tore up. Yeah. Those are the people that you genuinely want to follow anyway. So
yeah. I mean, I don't know, just really quick, I'll get more into the deeper stuff, but just throwing it out there, like these nice aesthetically pleasing, like pictures of their houses and stuff. Like there's never pictures of their family or anything anywhere. Like there's no spots of like real life. Like that's kind of sad, but maybe they put it all back once, they're done with their dang picture. But, and then when it comes to work, it is a little hard to disconnect and just be a dispatcher and not a wife. But it's something that, once I married Danny, like I knew I had to do. And thankfully I've been able to do that. And then
you're covering Danny's shift right now too. You guys are on the same days.
Yeah, we're back on the same days now. Yeah. So I've had my breakdowns at work, but it's after everything's said and done.
Let's talk a little bit more about your breakdowns. Let's talk a little bit about your breakdowns at work. I don't think people understand what we're talking about, but 6 months, it's 8 months now. 8 months ago, we had a shooting. And you were on the radio, right? And in that shooting, we lost 2 officers. And a year or 2 before that, your husband, Danny, we were working together, and then there was a shooting that he was involved in. You were on the radio for that.
No, I was on the phone for that.
You were on the phone, but you were working dispatch for that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you can hear what's going on the radio. So you have a lot you've gone through a lot in the last couple of years that would cause you to have the hair on the back of your neck raise when certain types of calls go out, right? Like, when you're sending your husband to a hot call where the person has a gun or a knife, it's like, oh, here we go. And you can't help but think that way, right?
No, yeah. I mean, you always know what could happen and you see it on the news. And it's true, you never think it could happen at your agency. And our agency isn't slow. So we've had, different shootings, and we have, fights all the time and pursuits all the time. So that I'm kind of like, I guess, jaded to.
Mhm.
And when his first shooting happened, I took the phone call and it was an active shooter. And they get there and I'm just listening to it. My coworker who did a great job, and she like dispatched the units, and Danny wasn't even supposed to be there. He didn't even put himself on the call, actually. He was supposed to be a briefing. And yeah, we hear all the gunfire on the radio, and it's just a different experience when you're hearing something like that. Like everything kind of slows down. It's really weird what your brain does when it starts.
All right, we're back. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties on our computers. It's 2023, and sometimes I just want to go back to the old soup cans and string.
I know, it's horrible. Okay, so where did I leave off? Do you remember?
Yeah, so we got into a little bit about some of the traumatic situations you were in, but I think what I was trying to get at more importantly was how do you leave that at home when you live in a home that's you have a police husband, you're a police dispatcher, and you work for the same agency?
When he had his first shooting, actually he's had two other ones. So when he had his first two shootings, it was more so knowing he was okay. So when I saw him, then I knew he was okay, and I was able to leave it alone. And when I talked to him a day or two after, because that's usually kind of when the adrenaline starts settling and you have that adrenaline dump, and I talked to him and he's okay, then I was okay with that.
Okay.
And knowing that that he wasn't injured, you know what I mean? Like I was okay with it. And so we kind of just moved on, but I was kind of like freaked out. And then after his second shooting, a guy that was in a car just decided to ram into him. So I was kind of on edge after that, because I'm like, Jesus, it's like he's a freaking crap magnet. Like everything's happening right now. 2020 happened and we were kind of all on edge, but I mean, our little nook of the world kind of seemed to be okay and kind of stable. And I was okay with that too. Like I just wouldn't let it creep into my mind and let it really bother me. But I always knew like tensions were high and things could happen.
Do you think that makes it different for you? Do you have a different perspective than a police wife who isn't in law enforcement?
Probably, because I at least have the comfort of like contacting people at work if I'm not there, or being at work and being in the mix and knowing every detail of everything that happened and what's really going on. Whereas when I'm at home and when they're at home, like you're just playing that waiting game, and your thoughts are going crazy with what could be or what is happening. So I'm really lucky. I mean, I think a lot of the wives have somebody they can reach out to, because our department's so small and close knit in some sense. But in general, I think the wives that aren't in the know, or maybe only halfway's in the know, I could see how that could be very unsettling for them, because that waiting period is just horrible. That silence gets really loud.
So, aside from traumatic incidents and stuff, let's just remove all that. Just the everyday stressors that officers encounter at work. And would you, as a wife, want to know about those things, or do you want to just have him just leave it home? Like when I come home, for instance, I don't bring a lot of stuff unless it's like major stuff I'm stressing over that Liz can't avoid. not saying like if I'm studying for an exam or something, I'm going to bring that stuff home. But my everyday 9 to 5 stuff, I don't generally bring that home. And that's just the type of relationship we have.
Yeah.
Because Liz is a worry wart, and I don't need her worrying any more than she already does.
Yeah.
But you can't avoid that at your house, and because you're in the
Yeah.
mix with all the. But would you rather know about that or not?
I mean, now down the line, probably not, because a lot of it's just, for lack of better words, dumb stuff that I don't
Yeah.
need to be told anyways. But I think that if you're in a relationship, if there is a call that's bothering you or that you need to vent about, and you don't feel comfortable venting with the guys because you got to keep up whatever persona, you need to have somebody to vent to. So it should be your wife, or, and they should be willing to hear it too. Like, they know
Yeah.
what you're doing for a job, and they should at some point in your career, you need to sit down and have that conversation about all of the different things that you're going to experience and that you're going to see, because it's a lot of gruesome stuff that the normal person will never see in their lifetime, and maybe see one time. And you guys
Right.
are seeing hundreds of times over a 30-year career. And that's not normal for anybody by any means, especially in law enforcement. And they should know also like what to look out for. Like, if you start like heavily drinking, start distancing yourself from work, like, staying away from work just so you can work overtime to take a break from work, and, stuff like that. Like, if you start acting out of character, it could be because you're starting to suffer in some of those areas because of all the things that you see. And it doesn't always have to be like shootings. It could be like baby deaths, or just car deaths, or, people burning, or whatever it is. It could be traumatizing after a while because it's all built
Definitely.
up.
Yes.
So I think that's just a conversation that if you, as a working marriage, you should have at some point. And then if you're like, hey, I'm not going to bother you about the robberies or the foot pursuits or whatever, if you don't want to know about it and everything's okay with me and it's not bothering me. But if there's something that does bother me, like, I need to tell you about it, and you need to be willing to sit there and actually listen to what I have to say.
I think a big open invitation to that is for wives that are listening, is when a husband comes home, or I shouldn't even just say wives, because we have female officers too, but a spouse, when your police spouse comes home, it's nice to hear, at least from my perspective, tell me about your day. Because then I can process. What I'm doing is downloading my day. I'm not suppressing, holding it all in. I'm actually downloading it, getting it all off my chest. And it may be little things, but throughout the course of a 12.5-hour shift, something's going to bother me. Very rarely have I gone through my career where it was a perfect day. I usually have someone mouth off on me, had a bad call, had a bad incident. And, a lot of people don't realize, but, we might go to a significant, child abuse, graphic child abuse, and then have to, right after that call, got to reset, hit the reset button and go to the next call. And it might be something with somebody else's problem that wasn't as graphic as before. Could be a neighborly dispute, and you're thinking in your head, guys, just get along.
Yeah.
That's the sort of stuff that you finish, you go to the locker room, decompress, and go home, but you still need to get that off your chest. So to the spouses out there, that's one bit of advice. When you were coming up, I knew you before you started dating your husband. But you kind of were desensitized to a lot of the stuff already because you were a police daughter and granddaughter. So were you kind of exposed to this stuff growing up anyway?
Oh no, I mean, I kind of knew some stuff because we lived in the city where we worked. And so I would see my dad roll up, or, them chasing people down a street. So I kind of knew, but my dad kept me in the biggest bubble. Like, I had absolutely no clue what really went on. And so he never, ever talked about work. Like, he just barely starts telling me stories now about some of the situations he was in. And the only one I remember him talking to me about when I was young was he went to a drowning, and the girl was, I think, maybe 5 or 6, but she was my same age. And she was, when I was little, I had real blonde hair, and she had blonde hair too. So he just envisioned me at the bottom of the pool. So I remember him coming home and really like hugging me And I was like, "Oh, what's wrong, Daddy?" And he told me. He actually told me that day. So, but other than that, he never ever talked about work, and I think he never talked about it to my mom. I even know still he doesn't tell my mom a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
every now and then when we go out to eat, me and with my husband, then he kind of tells us some of his old war stories now.
Mm.
But he separated it completely. So I think I got a lot of that from him too. Like I don't really talk about it in front of the girls as much either. Maybe some things like
Yeah.
obviously with social media stuff, and um we have some talks about that with phones and everything, and being mindful of their surroundings and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I keep our calls and stuff away from them. So
As you're talking about that, I started thinking about that as well. Yeah, there were a couple times I've come home and I've given my kids the biggest hugs and little things, that it usually stems from what I experienced at work that day. And I think when you're a parent, what you experience at work involving kids
yeah.
is different because I was a cop before I had kids, before I was married, and I've been in situations involving kids, and I had a different perspective than
Hmm.
after I had kids. So that's very, very true.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's pretty incredible what you've done throughout your career, throughout your life. It's not easy being. I know my oldest has worries. She knows what I do. She knows the city. She's 17 now, so she's on the internet, and she
Hmm.
knows what goes on in El Monte. She knows what goes on in her profession, and she does worry. Um, so I think, yeah, what you've done as a police daughter, whether you believe it or not, I know your dad shielded you. I think you were still mentally prepared going into the profession. And then on top of that, you were in the profession before you met your husband.
Yeah.
And so and then you had to go through it all. That's a story for a different day, but yeah, dating, that could be an episode in of itself, dating somebody at work. You had a bunch of experiences doing that.
Yeah, not so good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it,
Yeah.
but
But I mean, I think you have the credibility to discuss this matter. So if anybody's listening out there that's a police spouse, um, uh, and you might have specific questions, Kristen's definitely the person to message because she can tell you. She's been through it all.
yeah, yeah. I mean, going back to the kids too, I think like now we have to be a little bit more real with them because like you said, Kalia's now on the internet and stuff. And I know when we had our incident in June, like our kids started getting text messages if
Oh,
Danny was okay.
jeez.
So now they have that worry now.
Yeah.
They were kind of in their own little bubble, but now they know.
All right.
And going back to how I deal with things, like they saw how how upset we were by everything and stuff
Mm.
like that now. So they really like check on us. So even though we thought we were being like pretty stoic and like holding our own, like they still sensed how um how messed up we were, and
Yeah.
you know, sometimes how I continue to be, and they check in on me and make sure I'm okay.
Yeah.
So they just know. Sometimes just need to be real with them.
And sometimes you just need to clear your head and get away from it all.
Yeah.
Like going to the happiest place on earth, which we're going to do right after this.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, sir. Getting away from all of it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you for giving us a little insight. I know we can split off on this episode and talk about 5 different episodes based on what you said here. But I think it's really important for people in our audience to know um, that that the person at home, when whether it's the husband or wife, has a spouse that's in law enforcement, that those relationships are dynamic. They're so different than the average
mhm.
household, because you're sending your spouse out to a daily battle, essentially, and then
Mhm.
when they come home, you're relieved because in the back of your mind, you know that there's a chance they may not come home. And the
Yeah.
law enforcement world community, if you follow one of these pages, you see it daily. You see officers not making it home daily, and you can't help
Yep.
but wonder if that's going to be your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this year, what we've had more officers shot than days in the year.
Yeah.
So it's rough. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, the takeaway, I think, if anything, is just communication, like real communication, not not typical responsive "I'm fine" or "I'm okay." Just be real and have an honest, open conversation.
Absolutely. All right, friend. Well, I'll see
Okay.
you in a little bit. And for everybody else, we'll see you next time on the 911 Strong podcast. Talk to you later.
Bye.